There we go. So we're going to jump into the MLS. I've got a sample house that we're going to look at today, and consider our example as we discuss negotiation and how we present our offers to potential sellers and listing agents. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Let me get that up on the screen here. While we're doing that, hopefully you guys had a great week. We are seeing a surge in activity in the last 7 days, and there are much more agents looking for properties and making offers, and there's multiple offers still out there in certain price ranges. Let me go ahead and pull up I've got a client that's a sample. We're going to look at client looking in Gig Harbor, and they are looking for a property that has a barn on it, and they are wanting to move forward with an offer on this particular property. So I'm going to pull up anything that has a barn on the MLS. And so you can see there's not a lot of properties in Pierce County specifically that have a barn. You can go very detailed into the MLS. So in order for me to find it, I'm going to go ahead and add the barn. There's a feature here, building condition. There it is, the site features, there's a barn. So I want to see anything that has a barn in Pierce County, specifically in Gig Harbor. And there's only 7 listings that come up that are active on the market. Now they have a price restraint. They want to keep it under 700. So I want to go ahead and put that in. And that brings us down to only 2 properties that are available. This one that's at $529 and this one that's at $579. So as I'm looking at this property, think about yourself and you're working with a buyer and you're thinking, my buyer wants to watch the property. They want to jump when the time is right, and we need to guide them along that way. But when you look at this property, the first thing you want to look at before you put an offer in or suggest to your client that they do an offer is look at the property history. That will tell you a lot about the seller's motivation. So I go here to the little clock under the pictures, and you'll notice that it was active back in October. They were at $579. Then it went pending right a week after it went on the market. So they thought they had the right buyer. And for whatever reason, it went back to active after only a few days. Then they dropped the price. Actually, no, they kept the price the same when it went back to active. And I'm looking at this from the history here. They kept it at $579, but then they dropped it in December to $559. We had seen the property when it was at $559. So we looked at the property in that first weekend in December. And my clients were interested in it then, but they were still looking at their options. They were a very, very viable shopper. They're pre-approved. They're looking to do a doctor's loan, and they're raising their family with 4 young kids. So they like the property. It's on 7 acres. And then they dropped the price here recently here to $529, which also sparked another call to me. And that's when I decided to have a conversation with the listing agent. So I went ahead and contacted the listing agent here, Carolyn Westmoreland, and I expressed, again, whenever you're going to pre-negotiate things, you don't want to give away too much information. So what I did is I called Carolyn and I told her, she'll know that I'm serious because I told her, Carolyn, hey, I just want to let you know I'm going to be showing the property this last weekend. I was kind of setting that appointment up, but I wanted to let her know we were very interested in this property and get more information about why the price drop went from $579 to $529, and get any more information about how serious the client needed to be in order to get a deal accepted with her seller. So here's how the conversation went. I contacted her, and I'll just pretend that you guys are Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn, it's Rochelle with Best Choice Realty. And she did, the normal formalities. How are you doing? And I said, hey, we were one of the early buyers when you had the price at $550. I showed the property, and now since you've dropped the price to $529, my buyer is very serious. They already are pre-approved. They've already made application with their lender, and I'm trying to determine if this is the property for them. Do you have some time for some questions? And Carolyn said, absolutely. Actually, she didn't. She had an appointment she's running into. She's like, let me call you back here in a little bit. So when she called me back, I needed to make sure that I had my bullet points in line. As I was pre-negotiating this for my clients, I need to understand a few things. Number one, I wanted to find out about the past, why it fell apart, why it went pending, and what was that buyer like. So I asked her questions about the listing, either about the time on market, the days on market, or any kind of past deals on why they fell apart and the reasoning for that. So I asked her questions around that. The next thing I asked her was about what type of inspection. It sounds like you didn't, she told me they failed on inspection, even though the sellers were willing to do some of the work repairs. And I found out from her that when I showed the property, again, that would have been this weekend, that when I go to show the property this weekend, that there were still some outstanding items that the seller was planning to do. Namely, there was water in the basement, and there also was a electrical panel that needed to be replaced. It had a Federal Pacific electrical panel. So there were two big things that scared or spooked the buyers away, the first buyers back in October, from moving forward with the sale. And I expressed to her that my buyers were very reasonable and they would be looking at getting a contractor to make those updates, and they have the funds to be able to do that. So it put her mind at ease, knowing that she was working with a trusted or a professional broker that represented the buyers. I was asking her more questions about, how many showings she was getting. What's the activity been like on her property since she dropped the price? She shared with me that she's had a lot of activity. In fact, she's got another buyer coming to tour the property on Saturday that was coming in from the East Coast that was very serious about this property. And before I ended the conversation, I gave her my cell phone number and asked her to contact me if that buyer came to the table with an offer, because my buyers were at the point where they're close to making an offer. I did share that with her. And she expressed that, come to the table as soon as you can, because I might have an offer that I'm going to be entertaining. So I called her back just the other day and I asked her if she'd received any offers from that party. She said, as far as I know, they're submitting one. I might be in a competitive situation or I might not, but I did ask her some more questions that will help you guys if you're drafting offers. When you are submitting offers, the thing you want to consider is it's not always about price. Certainly for this one, the price is driving the offer because she's got it down to a sweet spot where when I did a CMA, I was feeling like it should have been 530, 540 from the very beginning. From the time they listed in October, they should have listed at that price to begin with. Now that the seller has moved out, it's vacant, the chances of them selling it for that price, they're actually more motivated. And so the price, they're going to be firm on the price knowing that they're getting a lot of activity, but they might do repairs. So I'm going to probably write in a feasibility contingency. We talked about that being a strategy rather than an inspection contingency, because my client is not going to be asking for them to do a typical repair list. So instead of doing that, I'll most likely write the offer with a feasibility, with allowing for time for a contractor to come out, and then I will ask her to remove the water and also take care of replacing the electrical panels prior to us prior to closing. So I'll negotiate that or pre-negotiate that in my offer, knowing that I'm not going to go back and forth and do kind of an as-is. We're going to write an as-is kind of clause into our offer, especially if we're going to be competing with another offer. So for them, it's about ease, not having to negotiate it on repairs, especially when they have agreed to do the repairs and pay for those repairs out of escrow. I have a contractor, in fact, I think Tyson's on the call right now. He would be able to probably look at these pictures as we look at this, and based on the specs of 2,500 square feet, we're buying it for the land. They're going to want to remodel their kitchen, basically bump out this line of cabinets, So it's open to the dining area, make this a more open kitchen, obviously new cabinetry, rip out, demo this whole kitchen. And they're going to want to also, you see the pictures, they're also going to want to finish the basement. So that's something that can be done within the footprint. And I don't see pictures of the basement. That's unfortunate. But the basement's unfinished. You can kind of see it from the front of the house here. There's this basement underneath. So you can see it looks like a very large crawl space. It actually is about 7.5 feet tall down here. And it needs to be finished. And they'd like to put another bedroom down there and finish the basement. So a kitchen remodel and then a basement, and then we can write up an offer. So I don't want to lose the opportunity, and I want to get my offer looked at, obviously in comparison to the other offer that she's expecting. So I'm going to go into Transaction Desk, which is nice as you can do it right from your listing number here. And you can draft the offer. And some of the things I'm going to share with you are going to be very important in how you put it together. So by using Transaction Desk, you're able to draft the offer in such a way where you can make modifications or update it as you go by using the template that we have set up. It's a residential sale, and it's going to go ahead and bundle all of the documents that I need. So with that, it's going to allow me to make modifications if I speak with her on the phone, or if I speak with my client on the phone and we want to adjust something, I can do that very easily when I've got it placed in Transaction Desk. That's the reason to use Transaction Desk. So, I mean, I can go through this. I'm not going to go in detail, but I am going to show you guys on the form 21, some of the key things. If you're representing the seller or you're representing the buyer, you want to make sure that you have your checklist of things to discuss or to negotiate so that you're not having to go back and forth. You can really button this thing up in less time by knowing some questions, and knowing some answers to the questions, so you can guide your client. Some of the things when you're talking about an offer evaluator that are hot buttons, and you can highlight this. I've seen some of you, when you're representing a seller, you'll highlight the offers and certain points that may be areas where you can counter offer and have some good discussion with the other agent. So those are the things I'm going to highlight today. Would be, obviously, purchase price is a driving force for many people. But if you're representing the seller, you want to know what that's going to be netting the seller. So you'll want to also reference the 22A so that you understand what kind of closing costs. When I spoke with my client, when you're talking about purchase price, you also want to talk about how much money they have set aside for the purchase. And along with that, how much down payment, and will the down payment and the closing costs exceed what they have in their bank account. In a roundabout way, you need to identify and kind of help them understand how much money they have set aside for the purchase, for earnest money, and how much they have in liquid funds to cover the down payment. If they need help with closing costs, rather than pulling out of their 401k for closing costs, we may want to bump up the price, as long as it appraises, to cover their closing costs, or negotiate that. Instead of offering less in the price, in this particular instance, maybe we go in and ask them to pay closing costs and don't hit them with two things, a reduced price and then the closing costs. Now they've been on the market a while, they're going to be fairly firm on that price. I know that because I spoke with Carolyn. So when I do this, I'm going to want to factor it in. I did ask my client that already. So what they told me is, yes, Rochelle, if you could throw in, we've got enough to cover the 20% down, but it's going to be tight on the remainder of the closing costs. So if the seller could, in essence, cover our closing costs, it will be better for us. That way we'll have more money to pay the contractor to do the repairs that we want to do after we move in. So I'm going to write it 580, knowing that, you know, they're going to net, we're going to ask for the $5,000 in closing costs to offset. Now there's be more than $5,000 in closing costs because they're doing a doctor's loan. I've spoken with their lender, but that will make them feel less stressed when we get mutual acceptance. So I factor that in. Always consider the closing costs and their down payment when you're discussing purchase price. On the earnest money, you know, what is, everybody asks me, Rochelle, what do you recommend? If you're at the point, and especially in a multiple offer situation, the more it's the better. And they don't want to lose the house. So, you know, when they ask me, I'll say around 2 to 3%. 1%, if we're not up against anybody, $5,800 is enough to keep a buyer tied to the property most of the time. So that would be a rule of thumb, at least $5,800 in the form of a check. But if I'm countering something and I'm not comfortable with these buyers, and obviously if I'm representing the seller in this instance, that we've already had a buyer flake out a week after closing, so I may want to counter this or suggest when I speak with somebody like me on the phone, make sure that you at least have a $10,000 earnest money check. That will make my sellers feel good. So that's an area of what I would say an offer evaluation. Consider earnest money as a way to show strength in your offer. Obviously, a higher earnest money is going to show greater strength and the ability to perform, where less would be a minimum is not as desirable, especially if I'm going to ask them to wrap closing costs in and ask them to do some of the work repairs in my offer. Always having the closing agent hold that and forfeiture. Another area on the offer evaluator that is very important you should consider when you're discussing terms, not only price, but you should also discuss with your client the terms, meaning the possession and the closing date. I think too many agents call the shots on this, and then they run themselves risk of not being able to perform or having moving conflicts, or after I've got mutual, now we have to adjust some deadlines. It's better if you have this conversation before you create the offer. It goes like this. Hey, Todd, that's his name. Hey, Todd, it's Rochelle with Best Choice Realty. I showed the house to your wife this weekend. Wanted to follow up with you as I'm putting this offer together and find out from you. I know we talked about price. I know we talked about earnest money and how we're going to structure the finance aspect, but I also have some questions regarding the terms of our offer. For example, how much time we want to do on the feasibility contingency or the inspection contingency, and also on the closing date, making sure that I've really looked at your calendar and got a good game plan for you. You have time? And then, of course, they say yes. I then suggest, normally your lender is telling me it takes about 30 days, but let's pad that. Let's give yourself some time. When will you be moving in yourself, or will you be having having a moving company help you guys? He's going to tell me in this particular example that he's renting right now, like we talked about, and we have a couple months. So having a closing date be sooner rather than later would obviously be good for the seller, and just making sure that we have enough time to get the loan done. That was his biggest issue. So looking at this, I don't want to close on the last day of the month in February. But giving the lender enough time to do the doctor's loan and get some of the repairs done, I think it would be smart not to go 30 days. There's a reason why you put a date in there. I'm going to go ahead and put the 22nd. That will give us the time. If we do close earlier, the repairs are done early, we can close earlier, but let's write it with the 22nd. It's a Friday. That means they would get the keys. That way they could have their contractor go in and start working on the house to do the remodel of the kitchen and the basement, the 23rd and 24th. And that also gives Carolyn enough time to get the electrician out there and the water guy to pump out the water from the crawl space to give us a nice clean canvas to work within. So always think proactively. Don't just put a random date in there. That would be my takeaway for an offer evaluator. There's a reason, or you've spoken with your client, either your buyer or the seller, to understand the closing date and what makes the best sense for your seller. So I'm going to go ahead and write the 22nd. I did also speak with Carolyn about the possession, and since they've moved out, they're wanting to get their money as soon as possible. So I would do on closing, if the client's living in the property and the seller, you will want to talk with the listing agent about a potential rent back. That has won me more offers than you can imagine because I've had a good discussion about what's important to the seller. Is a rent back necessary? Do they need time? Do they need 3 days? Do they need a week to move out? If they do, you would check this other box here, and you would indicate that here in the other. And you'd want to reference the 65B or the 65A, depending on the situation. So 65, I'll put form 65 for interest of time. The other area of negotiation is this charges and assessments levy before but due after closing. If we're going to write it with the title contingency, we're going to write it with the feasibility contingency. But it's better to just, if you're representing the buyer, to check this box and have the seller prepay in full at closing. But if you already know that there is no HOA and there's nothing on title, and we might be up against another offer, you may want to advise your client to assume this and have a contingency that protects them in the title, and do some research with the local city or the jurisdiction to make sure that there is nothing proposed in the next year that would jeopardize or be an assessment or a charge that they would be responsible for. So again, best interest of the buyer, this box; best interest of the seller, this box. This is often a counteroffer point. To avoid a counteroffer, you're going to want to have a conversation with the appropriate parties. Okay, and then I would say the other thing to consider when you're drafting an offer for review is you do have the inspection and you do have a home warranty opportunity. Depending on your buyer, you may want to advise that, if they're not the type that's going to nickel and dime and go crazy, it might be best interest to just ask for an as-is, just the ability to do an inspection. But if they're not doing an inspection, at least ask the seller or you provide a home warranty that covers that particular homeowner or that buyer for a period of 1 year. The home warranties are very good in the state of Washington. They're actually underrated, in my opinion. I think that more people should use home warranties, and that there is, for example, in one house that I've sold, there was over $7,000 worth of work, and the home warranty company paid for every piece of work. There was a huge plumbing thing that was in the plumbing that we never would have seen. There are issues with toilets and appliances that were on this luxury property that definitely came up. My brother, he did a triplex. I paid, I think, $500, $600 for that triplex home warranty, but that's a huge help because he's managing his own property, not having to go find contractors to do work as he's taken ownership. That home warranty company has went ahead and assigned contractors to go out and do those repairs for those tenants. So there is even home warranties that cover triplexes, multiplexes, and also appliances if they're old or if the home is old. I would highly recommend you do a home warranty. If you're dealing with a builder, there's home warranties that are for builders as well. There's a company called 210, and a lot of sellers who are maybe building maybe want to offer those buyers a home warranty. It definitely sets yourself up for success by including that. It creates less hassle. If you're finding yourself struggling after closing with unhappy buyers or unhappy sellers, then a home warranty is a good option for you to start introducing more than you have in the past. At a minimum, you should discuss a home warranty plan and what it covers and what it does not cover with your client when you offer. So when I have the conversation would basically go like this. Todd, when we write this, I'll write it so that you have an inspection contingency and you have the right to have your inspector go out and do the inspection. If the inspector finds something wrong with the property, or you change your mind, or you go through the property and you just are not feeling good with your wife, or maybe another property comes on the market and you don't like the way this one's positioned for your household, you can do a subjective termination based on the 35R. And that will allow us to terminate the contract and get your earnest money back. Now, if you're wanting to do an as-is, like we're going to do with this particular offer, and do a feasibility, you won't have that ability to terminate unless it have to be not feasible, meaning I'd have to find out from the contractor that they can't do the basement remodel or can't extend your kitchen and get permits to do that. At that point, the feasibility would be such where maybe we ask the homeowner to go ahead and do the repairs that they've requested, provide us a home warranty, and we buy the home as is, and we take that risk. But I would not take the risk without a home warranty. Either I pay for one or the homeowner pays for one. It's just too much of a risk not to have a home warranty that covers little things, especially when it's a new buyer. They can go any state, Arizona, Texas, Colorado, any of those states I know of, they actually have a home warranty built into their contract. Where in Washington, we don't have that type of structure. We have the option in 22D to negotiate that, and many of you do not take that opportunity and do not have good conversations with your buyers or your sellers when it comes to home warranty time. So consider that as another aspect of negotiation, and something to consider when you represent the seller If somebody's asked you to pay for a home warranty, that can be negotiated. You could go back and negotiate that and ask the buyer's agent, because they're going to get the benefit of having the home warranty placed in the property. You could maybe ask them to split that home warranty with you. You can ask the seller that, hey, this will help us down the road in case there's things that they uncover along the way in dealing with Form 17 issues. You can say that. There are ways, there's reasons to get a home warranty, and you need to know how to discuss that with your client. Also, things to avoid counteroffer would be who they've opened title and escrow with. So that can build rapport. You can also build rapport by saying, I've opened up title with WFG. However, I understand that if your buyer needs to use somebody that they trust, I have a good closer, Edward, there at WFG. And I say to this Carolyn Westmoreland, I actually like Nicole. So I'll go ahead and honor your request of WFG, but if you would be so kind, since we share the escrow fee between buyers and sellers, that we use the buyer's closer, Nicole G at WFG, rather than Edward. They'd feel more comfortable with having her sign them rather than Edward. So that's something that you can easily negotiate before you put it on paper, is yes, we'll go with WFG, but let's negotiate who actually handles the closing. And we can specify or select that, because we share the title or the escrow fee. We don't share the title fee, we share the escrow fee. It says 22EF and pre-approval with all offers. So that's a clue to you when you look at this listing that you'll need to contact that lender and have them get you as close to an underwritten approval as you possibly can get, so that when you go in to offer, especially if you're up against another offer, you go in very strong. When I'm a listing agent, one of the considerations is to see that the clients have the ability to move forward with the sale, and there's not going to be any red flags with the financing. There have been lenders who have killed deals for buyers just because I called them and I asked them and they tell me, oh, we still haven't run the credit, or we're still waiting to hear back from them on a document or something of that nature. You want to make sure that you have had a conversation if you're the listing agent, had a conversation with that pre-approval letter, and you can go into the listing appointment. When you're deciding on an offer, whether we should accept Rochelle's offer or not, you can educate your seller and advise them that you've had that conversation with the lender. They have done a good job. They do have the means, and that's why she's asking for a 22EF. We do have the down payment that's liquid, not from overseas, not from some other entity, or not a down payment assistance from mom and dad, that we have the means to be able to put the down payment on the property. The seller has asked for that, and so they're requesting us to comply by including a 22EF and a pre-approval letter. So you can see that the client's looking for a very serious, very tight type of offer. So with that, I kind of went through, to recap, definitely look at earnest money when you're looking at an offer evaluator. The net, including any type of fees such as home warranty that sellers are paying for, or financing closing costs that are being paid for by the seller. That is in essence calculating or making sure that you can negotiate appropriately. We talked about closing. We talked about should you present in person? We didn't talk about that, but yes, if you have the opportunity to present in person, it goes a long way. I get as close to presenting in person as possible by providing a good cover letter that's in an email. As well as, and I have a couple samples if you'd like, just send me an email. I'll send you a sample email cover letter that outlines how I'm going to properly negotiate and build rapport with this agent. As well as you should have done a CMA to make sure that your client's not overpaying for the property. So I know based on my conversation with Carolyn, she didn't overprice. She's at the right price now. I might get a little bit of contribution. She certainly would present my offer if it was less than the asking price. She told me that straight up. So I can ask for closing costs, I think, at least get them to present the offer and maybe get me a counter offer. But it might be firm if, if the other agent comes into the play and they're asking for, they're structuring their offer differently than mine. And mine actually, we've developed a relationship over the past few weeks. So there's a lot that goes on to preparing the offer. Hopefully you took a few notes tonight. I'll be happy to, like I said, email you if you want to email me. the cover letter that has worked well, that I include with all of my offers. I adjust it slightly depending on the situation and how I built rapport, but I can send you a template that you can work from, along with a copy of their earnest money. It would be also very helpful. A lot of old school agents want that. Be sure you black out the account number, but showing that you've seen the earnest money check, that's a good thing to use and build trust and rapport with that listing agent. To have a copy of the earnest money check along with a copy of a pre-approval letter. And it's got to be a strong written pre-approval letter. It's almost got to look like it's underwritten. And have that lender on speed dial so that when the listing agent calls, that the lender responds and is able to professionally inform the listing agent about the strength of the client. And that's all I've got tonight. So a lot I talked about. Hopefully you have a great week. We will talk next week about another listing topic, and I'll send you an email like I did today about the topic. Have a great week, you guys. Enjoy we have some nice sunny weather, and I know that there's a lot going on and a lot of action right now on my pipeline, as there should be for yours. So don't give up on your pipeline. Start making phone calls, letting people know that the market's shifting, market's changing, and that you can help them with their buying and selling needs. But be more specific. Really figure out how you can help them. Have a great week, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.